Hi, everyone, and good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. Next slide, please. Welcome again to Flourishing at Work, a helping plan for professionals. This is session 6, build your resilience plan one day at a time by using your strengths. Next slide, please. This webinar is sponsored by the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, or MHTTC, and we're housed at Rutgers in the School of Health Professions in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. My name is Kati, and I'm the project coordinator of the center, and we'll be introducing our center and our webinar presenter today. The MHTTC is funded by SAMHSA, the Substance Use and Mental Health Services Administration, to enhance the capacity of the behavioral health and other related workforces to deliver evidence-based and empirically supported practices to individuals with mental illnesses. Please visit the MHTTC Network website for additional information at mhttcnetwork.org. Next slide, please. And if you're interested in staying up to date with the events and products that the Northeast and Caribbean MHTTC is providing, please sign up to receive our email communications. You can sign up at the bit.ly link provided on the screen. Also, following our webinar, you'll be asked to complete a brief survey. We value this feedback and use it to improve our activities and inform our future activities. The surveys are also important because our continued funding is linked to them, to the completion of them, so we thank you in advance for your feedback. Next slide, please. We also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website with the PowerPoint presentations and within a week today. This presentation was prepared for the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center under a cooperative agreement from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. All material appearing in this presentation, except that taken directly from copyrighted sources, is in the public domain and may be reproduced or copied without permission from SAMHSA or the authors. Citation of this source is appreciated. Do not reproduce or distribute this presentation for a fee without specific written authorization from the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center. At the time of this presentation, Marian Delkman-Rittman served as Acting Assistant Secretary for the Mental Health and Substance Use at SAMHSA. The opinions expressed herein are the views of the speakers and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services, or SAMHSA. No official support or endorsement of DHHS or SAMHSA for the opinions described in this presentation is intended or should be inferred. We encourage you to interact with our presenter during the webinar by using the chat feature. Please post any comments or questions you have in the chat, and I will collect your questions as we go and ask them of the presenter during the Q&A time towards the end of the presentation. During the webinar, our presenter may pose questions to you, as well as poll questions, so please use the chat feature or respond to the polls when prompted. Thank you. The MHTTC network uses affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in all activities. This includes language that is strength-based and hopeful, language that is inclusive, accepting of diverse cultures, genders, perspectives, and experiences, language that is healing-centered and trauma-responsive, language that invites individuals to participate in their own recovery journeys, language that is person-first and free of labels, non-judgmental and avoids assumptions, and language that is respectful, clear, and understandable and consistent with their action, policies, and products. Now let's begin our webinar. We have Dr. Michelle Sechner with us today. Dr. Sechner is an assistant professor at Rutgers, the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. She has been working in the areas of health, wellness, and self-care strategies for over 15 years. Her work has centered on helping people living with mental health conditions, their family members, and the staff who support them. Dr. Sechner has worked in a variety of settings, both community and inpatient mental health settings, nursing homes, and in-home services. In her current role, she works with a wide range of mental health professionals, providing consultation, building staff resilience, and flourishing. She also teaches students and conducts research on motivational health and wellness practices. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sechner. Welcome again.
Thank you so much, Kati, and welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you're back here for session number 6. This is going to be a fun session, I think, putting it all together. I tried to sort of think about the pieces that we need to move our flourishing forward, because that whole series, the series that we've been conducting is about building our flourishing at work. So a few things that we're going to talk a little bit more about today is that deep dive into personal strengths and how we can use them to flourish. We're also going to talk about building our own readiness. And I imagine that many of us are motivators and readiness builders for other people. And I'm now here for you to help you feel a little bit more ready to build a flourishing plan for yourselves. And we're also going to talk about why that is a good idea, which I think we probably all know why building plans and goals is important. But let's talk a little bit more about it for our own perspectives. And lastly, we're going to talk about building a flourishing plan for ourselves and actions that we can take each day. So I'm glad that you're here today. I think that I'm including all of us on both live participants and people who are watching the recording, we are strong people. We are all strong people. We are helping professionals. We help others. We make a difference in people's lives. And I sort of think this elephant and person sort of navigating on a tightrope sort of it embodies what we struggle with every day, which is we're using our strengths, we're navigating, and we're trying not to fall off that tightrope as we move forward. So we have a lot of strengths, and we each are strong in a number of areas. And I think I've talked about the VIA strength inventory previously. I have it here on this slide and also in the resources. But I encourage, if you haven't yet, I really encourage you to check it out. It's a free survey, basically, that will tell you your strengths in different categories. What's really important to remember is that we all have all these strengths, but some are stronger for us and some are less strong. Some are strengths that we use every day, and others we might not use very often at all. But what the research does show us is that flourishing people find ways to use their strengths at work by using them to solve problems, reframe difficulties, and enjoy the work they're doing. It's also important to remember that comparisons are not helpful. We are all amazing. You are amazing. I am amazing. Everyone here is amazing. And we have a lot of strengths. As we go through the next couple of slides, I'll be going through these categories. I'd ask you to consider, how can your personal strengths inform your priorities and approach to your work? What strengths do you most identify with? How might your personal strengths be used to start or continue flourishing actions? And think about your strengths and skills for a moment. Are you someone who has a lot of empathy and compassion for others? I'm betting probably many of us do. Are you organized and skilled at prioritizing tasks and other work responsibilities? Some of us are probably much better at it than others. I would guess that there are many people who are better at it than I am. I think we're all a work in progress. I know myself included, and being organized is definitely one of the skills I continue to work on. Are you someone who's creative or committed to making music and make people laugh every day? Are you a team builder who supports other helping professionals get through the day? So I'm just giving you some examples of the kinds of strengths that you probably have already. And I'm going to ask you during this hour to share some of the strengths that you have with us, if you like, in a poll. So it's completely anonymous. The first category that the VIA Character Institute has developed is called wisdom, and that's a collection of 5 different areas. I think when I looked at these strengths, I thought, you know what, this is really about our thinking and how we approach information to make decisions and organize the way we understand new information. I suspect for many of us as helping professionals, we're constantly using our creativity, curiosity, perspective, and judgment each day. So creativity is sort of the new ways of doing interesting things and being original and or adaptable. Curiosity or exploring and discovering new information. It could be seeking new experiences or just wanting to build your knowledge. The strength of judgment is making those rational and logical choices and analyzing, evaluating ideas, opinions, and facts. I think about, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but Star Trek, The Next Generation had a character. He was a robot named Data. And I always think, Data would be the epitome of a strength of judgment. A love of learning means passion for learning, a desire to learn just for learning's sake. And perspective, having that ability to see the bigger picture in life. And I suspect that as helping professionals, many of us in mental health and education and health, we are able to see that forest through the trees. And we can kind of avoid getting hung up on those small details when there are bigger issues to consider. And it also might mean offering good advice to others, which I suspect that many of us often do in our roles as well. And then courage, oh my goodness, being that candle in the dark of bravery, facing your challenges, threats, or difficulties. I think that's a really important strength. And I imagine many of us have built that up over the last few years during the pandemic and during all the challenges we faced. It also can mean acting on a goal, even when it's not popular, or facing fears. And bravery really could be something like physical bravery. If you think about firefighters or soldiers or police officers, you could think about psychological bravery of being able to face painful aspects of oneself and trying to change, or moral bravery, and speaking for what's right, even if it's not necessarily a popular opinion. So different kinds of bravery as strengths. There's also honesty, and that's when you present yourself in a genuine and sincere way without pretense and take responsibility for yourself and your actions. Thinking about that, I imagine again that many of us in helping professions tend to be fairly honest, which is a good trait and a good strength. And it can make people feel more trusting in us, right? And it's important that we remain true to who we are and honest with ourselves as well. Encourage, there's also perseverance, which is sticking with things, being hardworking, finishing what started, despite any barriers or obstacles that arise. Some people really enjoy that. You know what? I did a very hard thing and I feel great about it. I know people who take hikes in the woods and climb mountains, and they really feel a sense of accomplishment for having persevered in difficult times. Also, zest. I love saying that word. Zest is part of courage. And that means approaching a situation or life in general with excitement and energy, not sort of approaching things half-heartedly or halfway. People who are high in zest are excited to get up in the morning and they live their lives like an adventure. I imagine you know some people like that, or maybe you're like that on certain days in certain situations. And then humanity is another category of strengths. And I really do think that helping professions like educators, medical professionals, and mental health practitioners probably have a lot of strength in this area. We often have to balance that out with the next area of justice and temperance to make sure we don't care too much, and that we have that sort of work-life balance that we've been talking about throughout the series. And we balance our workload out with our colleagues. But in humanity, I would say that we're probably all really strong in this, right? Kindness, being nice to others, having compassion, listening to people, being with people who are suffering, that takes a certain kind of strength. And I imagine that many of us have that strength. Love, and when I say love, and when we're talking about that as a personal strength, rather than an emotion, it's the degree to which you value close relationships with people and contribute to that closeness in a warm and genuine way. So I think that many of us probably have a lot of love for our fellow human, which is why we're in these helping professions, which is why I had to choose a rainbow, be a rainbow in someone else's cloud. I really like that saying a lot. And then social intelligence, when a person knows what makes other people tick. And also having that awareness inside of ourselves, what makes us tick, what makes other people tick, and how to get along in different social situations. For many of us in the helping professions, that is one of the most important strengths that we have, which means that we can meet total strangers and try to engage them and help them in some way. We've got a few more. So justice. I know that as helping professionals, we're often led by our strengths in justice because we end up advocating, right, for care, for education and services on behalf of children, adolescents, and adults. We're treating people fairly, and that's a strength that we try not to let our personal feelings bias our decision about others. We're trying to get everyone a fair chance and help them. And leadership, that tendency that we might have to organize and encourage a group to get things done while managing our relationship with everyone there. And then in teamwork, meaning that in team situations, we are committed to contributing to the team's success. And it could be a work group, it could be a sports team, it could be a family work group, or just a group of friends working together. But you know those people who have a very strong sense of teamwork, who are willing to show up for everyone, regardless of the situation. And then the next category is temperance. I thought about the skills in temperance, and I think that they're kind of talking about the way we interact with the world, other people, and our environment. These strengths are kind of quiet and hidden a little bit, and yet they're really the foundations and important in helping us build and maintain relationships and our actions. So forgiveness is a strength, which means sort of going beyond to understand someone who has wronged or hurt us and trying to let go of those things. The humility, sort of being able to adequately evaluate your accomplishments. I'll put myself in this category. I tend to be a bit too humble. Sometimes when I think about my accomplishments, I know other people think have a really easy time evaluating their accomplishments. So sort of knowing where you are in that spectrum and, being able to accurately portray who you are. Prudence. Whenever I think of songs, a friend of mine used to think, I always hear a song in these words. And whenever I see the word prudence, I think about a Beatles song by this, similar name. But prudence is being careful about your choices, stopping and thinking before you act. It's a strength of restraint. And when you're prudent, you're not taking unnecessary risks and you're not saying or doing things that you might later regret, which is kind of related to the next strength, which is self-regulation. And that's kind of complex because it means controlling your emotions and appetite and regulating what you do. And it also helps really keep a sense of balance, order, and progress in life. And the last strengths category is called transcendence. And the strengths that lie within transcendence really can help us build positivity and flourish in ourselves and others. And they include things like appreciating of beauty and excellence. And that can mean really enjoying physical beauty, skills, or talent. It could be music or math or physics or ballet, any of those things. And gratitude. You'll notice that a lot of these things are things that we've talked about throughout the series. So gratitude can be very helpful in expressing thanks and building our flourishing as well, and taking the time to genuinely express our thankfulness to other people. And hope, having hope, I think as a helping provider, that's one of our main skills. That, we think about the future optimistically, and we try to have that balanced positivity. And humor, having some kind of element to find amusement in a situation and the lighter side of to others. So humor really can help us with social connections and move group goals, but it also really can help us with our own coping. And lastly, spirituality. And that can be a very comprehensive area for people that includes things like meaning, purpose, life calling, beliefs about the universe, our faith, expression of virtue and goodness, and practices that connect with the transcendent. So this can be for people who have faith, and it can also be for people who want to look at transcendence from a more secular perspective or non-faith based, which are all of these, a lot of these elements of purpose and meaning are really, really key to flourishing at work and feeling satisfied in our lives. So there are a lot of relationships between our strengths and problem solving. We can use our strengths to protect us from problems. We can be creative in problem solving when we use our strengths, and also for coping. Think about people who have a good sense of humor at work, or express gratitude, who offer forgiveness or lean into that teamwork. People who have social intelligence and perseverance. These things all really can push us through or help support us when we are helping others. Our strengths build our values and how we approach life and our work. Our strengths can build our relationships with the people we help, and also, of course, our coworkers and supervisors. Lastly, strengths really help us feel more satisfied at our jobs. VIA Institute reports that workers who use 4 or more of their strengths at work each day have a more positive work experience and report their work as being a calling in their life. So it's important to remember that those strengths are not only who we are and what we're good at, they also can build us up and support us. So now I want to hear from you. I've been talking a lot. Where are most of your strengths? So if we could start poll 1, please. Remember these, sorry.
I'm so sorry. Poll 1 has been launched.
Thank you, Kati. Poll 1 has launched. And remember each of these areas that we sort of touched on. Wisdom is sort of things about your head and knowledge, courage, about bravery and moving forward, humanity, sort of that connection to people, kindness, compassion, justice, thinking of advocacy and fairness with others, temperance, self-regulation, and transcendence, connection and meaning and purpose. You can pick multiple. So I welcome you to choose the strength area that you think are most important to you, or the ones that you have most at your surface. So I think, can we go ahead and close that now, Kati, please? All right, cool. Oh, I love looking at these polls. Yes, unsurprisingly, you all are amazingly strong in humanity, which I knew it, darn it, I knew that. That's good. I would expect to see that. And wisdom as well, because you're here, you're learning things. That's great. We have justice, and then sort of split between courage, temperance, and transcendence. Thank you very much, everybody. And if you haven't taken that survey, I really encourage you to check out the VIA character index survey. It's free. You do have to give them your an email address, but it's really interesting work that they're doing. It's a nonprofit organization trying to understand strengths in people. So it's a great tool for you to know what your strengths are, but also really great if you're a supervisor to talk to your staff about how they can utilize their strengths and match tasks with strengths. So I do want to say that your character strengths can change over the years. The last time I take the strengths index a couple of times, and most of my strengths fall into wisdom, humanity, and transcendence. Like you're probably not surprised to hear that. But remind yourself, just because a specific strength isn't high on your list, you still have it. So those 25 strengths and those areas that we just went over, we all have some aspect of that strength. It may just not be a signature strength or the thing that we use and turn to every day. And my quick example is when I was working on my doctorate degree, I took that survey and they rank all of the strengths. And my very last strength, I don't know if anyone wants to guess, but my very last strength was perseverance. Despite that, I managed to finish. So I use that as a reminder to myself that even though it is not something that I'm particularly using every day or think about every day, I have perseverance. So you may take the survey and say, oh, I just guess I am not I am not whatever enough. And the truth is, it's not, you are enough. You have amazing strengths and skills, and remember that. And it's where are you using them every day, and where might you want to kind of push it out a little bit. So thank you. Flourishing, which is what we've been talking about all these sessions, is it takes strength and readiness. I imagine that many of us know all about readiness or talk about readiness. This is a graphic of Prochaska and DiClemente's trans-theoretical model of change. It's also known as the stages of change. And some of us may use this when we talk to people and ask them, are they ready to quit smoking? Are they ready to study more? Are they ready to take their diabetes medication more often? I'm just giving you some examples, but it also has relevance for us. Thinking about the things that we've talked about over these sessions, that flourishing is action. Flourishing isn't reading a book. Flourishing isn't thinking great thoughts, although that's part of it. But flourishing really is taking some kind of action. And we've offered information about making yourself a priority, letting go when you need to, maintaining a healthy positivity, and thinking outside the box for flourishing. But in this webinar, I'm going to ask you to consider one or maybe two flourishing actions you can take each day to build your resilience at work. So imagine for a minute where you might be in your thinking about a daily flourishing action. Wherever you are, it's okay, but it's important to say and ask myself, am I ready? Am I ready to flourish? I mean, I personally, I'm ready. I am ready to flourish, but I don't want to answer for anyone else. So we'll be coming back to this idea of the different areas of readiness, but it's basically pre-contemplation, thinking about a change, contemplation, or pre-contemplation could be thinking, but it could also be not even aware that a change is needed. Contemplation could be thinking about that change, considering it, preparation, building a plan, action, doing something, maintenance, keeping it up, and relapse. Oh my goodness, what? That can mean that sometimes we fall off the truck and we don't do the great thing that we had decided we were going to do, which sometimes spurs us back into action, and it's a cycle. So we are going to talk about readiness a little bit more. Changing or doing new things to build a habit can be a challenge. Just look at diet and exercise industries. It just takes practice, right? Just like riding a bike, it takes practice. Building our own motivation to make any changes is really important. And I think that anytime we want to do something new, if we're going to take some flourishing actions, right? It means asking ourselves some questions, some open-ended questions. For example, why? Why am I interested in flourishing? Why am I interested in doing more flourishing actions? How would taking a flourishing action help me at work? And that is going to be completely personal, and you don't have to put that in the chat, but I do encourage you to think about that. There is sometimes a disconnect between wanting to take action and actually taking that action. Has anyone ever experienced that? I mean, if I was in an audience, I'd be like, that would be me, right? I think about taking actions all the time, and I often fall, I don't ever make it to the action phase. So this session is going to offer you some strategies to think about how to make a plan for yourself. Because we know that actions support flourishing. As I said, it's not something that we can think about. It's something that we do. I saw a really interesting social media post that was titled, "Want to feel better? Take out the trash." And I was like, what? But what they were basically saying is that we really have to take some kind of actions. And, our behaviors sometimes influence our mood. And having reminders, encouragement, support, and momentum. So thinking about flourishing, I really am curious about what you might think. I've got you another anonymous poll, and this is about your readiness and thinking about flourishing actions. I'm curious about this idea of flourishing actions. And I'm not going to give you the answer of what that would look like, because it's going to look like whatever it looks like for you. I'll give you an example. But when you think about adding or maybe expanding the things that you're already doing for yourself to flourish more, how ready are you? Are you already doing things? Are you thinking about it? Are you gathering ideas and resources? Are you looking for that motivation to start again? I know I was there January, February, I was looking for some more motivation, or maybe all of the above. So I encourage you to go ahead and vote on the polls. And I do want to talk a bit about the idea of readiness building. So I'm in the field of psychiatric rehabilitation, which means helping people sort of get back to where they once were or where they want to go. So I've read a lot about motivation and thinking about readiness. One area that I think can be really valuable is finding those rituals that kind of put me in the mood or build my readiness and motivation. It might be tying one action to another action. For example, I like to take a walk in the morning. I like to take a break. I take a walk break basically. And I am not always enthusiastic about this activity. I'll be honest with you. Particularly today here by me, it was really cold. I had my coat on and I was freezing. So what I like to do is I take that walk and I listen to a positive psychology podcast. And that feels like a win-win because I'm getting myself out, which is a flourishing step for me. Because whenever I go for a walk, even 10 minutes, my thinking is better. I feel calmer. I am more creative. I'm more productive. It really helps me think things through. I benefit. It makes me flourish. It really does. But it's not always something I would do left to my own devices. If I listen to a podcast, that's something I don't usually let myself do because I've got life, I'm working, I've got my family, I'm dealing with things. And if I take that walk, I get to listen to my podcast. And that's kind of how I link the two things together. And that's my ritual. I know that if I go for a walk in the morning, I'm going to give myself a really some kind of podcast that's going to feed me, that's going to nourish me, that's going to replenish me and encourage my flourishing. So, Kati, can we see the results of poll 2? Cool. Okay. I see a lot of people gathering ideas and resources. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is a great place to be because you're going to make an informed choice. And in the way, you're going to learn about the things that you are good at because you're finding out more about your strengths and you're considering these different things. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate you considering that with me. And I think I'm probably in action. I mean, I have to, do the work myself in order to think about these topics. So I would say I'm going to give you my example in a moment of my flourishing actions. So the way you can build your motivation, as I said, is to ask some open-ended questions for yourself. So here's an open-ended question. Why is your flourishing a priority for you now? For some helping professionals, prioritizing flourishing might be due to feeling sick, unmotivated, experiencing burnout, or even considering leaving their jobs. But I'd like for you to think about why you are choosing to make this a priority now and continue to remind yourself of this if you choose to work on a flourishing plan. If you're feeling stuck, unhappy, or maybe just some of the other emotions that we haven't talked about, that might be your reason for making the change now. In the chat, if you like, I welcome you to write a few words on why flourishing is your priority. And I will tell you that flourishing is my priority because I know that I work better. I'm happier as a person. I'm more invigorated by the work that I do. I am better at my work when I pay attention to my flourishing. I've had those experiences of feeling burned out and unhappy in a job and considering leaving and unmotivated. And it's not a very pleasant place to be. And I know I'm sort of singing to the choir here as helping professionals. But the interesting thing is that many of us probably know a lot of these strategies, and we aren't always wonderful at applying them for myself. I'm just speaking for me, and I'm putting it out there that I think some of you might, be experiencing some of that ambivalence, as they would say, about considering actions for flourishing. Yes, and so some folks are thinking about new work. Some folks are thinking about healthy work environments and the importance of that. Absolutely. And people reporting feeling less irritable and more emotionally available to the people one supports. Absolutely. When you're working with people and you're having a bad day, I always used to say this to the folks when I was doing work in the hospitals, the psychiatric hospitals, because when staff came in and they were not having a good day, man, all the service recipients, they knew the staff was not having a good day. And it means that we're more effective. Also, oh, thank you. It's so nice to hear that people want to remain teachable. That love of learning, that's a strength. So remaining open and curious to what happens in our life. It means that change is less painful. It means that we can keep going in our careers that sometimes we feel are a passion and a calling for us. And definitely trying to practice what you preach. Let me tell you, this is very important, right? We make much better helpers when we help others, and being the best that we can at doing our jobs. Thanks everybody for your thoughts on this. Another interesting consideration I'd like you to think about is making flourishing a habit. So I'm asking you to think about one or two flourishing actions, whatever that looks like for you. But what happens if we do that day in, day out? Those become habits. And then we don't really have to think about them very much. It could be, if we think about habits, good habits are like brushing our teeth or going to bed at 11 every night, or, those bad habits like, eating chips or cookies or that extra cup of coffee in the afternoon when we lose steam. So flourishing can really be one of those good habits that support our work life. And it also needs to have a foundation of self-compassion and forgiveness. We're not perfect. We often, as helping professionals, spend our careers helping other people, giving advice, supporting others, being that strong person, having hope. And we have to turn that lens and reflect it on ourselves as well, and remind ourselves that we also can make mistakes and recover, and we can have hope for ourselves. Trying something new can take some bravery. And, has anyone ever tried something new and then sort of like, oh, this is not working well for me? But as a habit, it can be very helpful to focus on very specific actions. There's a great ebook that's listed in the resources by Christine Carter, and it's very long, but it's quite good. It's about 70 pages, and it's how to build new habits, like building positive habits. And her recommendation really is focusing on the specific actions that will make the most difference for you, that are positive for you, and starting very slow. She recommends less than 5 minutes, which I thought was fascinating, but under 5 minutes, and linking that action to some kind of quote trigger. And she gives some great examples of, if you want to get back to the gym, hanging your gym bag on the back of the door, or putting her walking shoes right next to the door along with her dog's leash or something like that. So you can think about, how do you connect two things so it becomes a positive experience instead of a negative experience. Thinking about your own habits, and I know that you have probably some rock star flourishing actions taking place in your life right now. What are those? What are the things that you're doing right now to make your flourishing happen? And are there any habits you would like to develop? I know for me, I'm pretty good at walking because I focused that attention on it. And I try to meditate about once a day, and trying to turn off my email after 6 p.m. I'm fortunate I'm able to do that. But I really need to work on to develop some better work-life balance. habits, and getting better at saying no, and reminding myself that these flourishing actions are going to help me. So those are some things that I need to work on. So how does a plan help you? There's so much research and literature out there about the importance of creating goals and plans. A plan can help you set goals. It can really be that roadmap for how you want to live your life. Because we are helping professionals, I'm leaning into that because that's who we are. We're not great sometimes at making ourselves a priority. Sometimes we are, but sometimes we may let our own needs fall off of our priority list. So introducing new actions to focus on our own flourishing, it requires a lot of effort to overcome that inertia and patience and the ability to persevere. We have to remind ourselves of the priorities that we have. If we say that our own flourishing is a priority, I'll be honest with you, my own flourishing is very important to me. And it's also very important to my employer that I flourish, because I'm much happier, I'm much more productive, I'm much better at engaging people, I'm much better at all of the things that I do. I'm also very invested in the flourishing of my colleague Kati, who is on this webinar with me, because when I'm invested in my coworkers' flourishing, I'm also creating a good work environment, and I'm creating sort of a flourishing environment, right? So those are priorities for me. It also, goal setting, when you set a goal and you achieve it, it just feels awesome. And that improves our self-efficacy, our confidence that we can do things that we want and achieve things that we want. And also sort of having that progress, tracking that progress, it can be sort of fun and gamified, if you will, like what successes have you had? Where are you going with that? And I think by committing to our own flourishing, we talked about this just a moment ago, we're really committing to becoming better helpers. So how can you exercise self-compassion and kindness to yourself and others as you move forward? And how might you see challenges and setbacks as opportunities for growth, strength development, rather than a failure? Those are some hard questions. And as this napkin says, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So let's get to some of the plan. So I was wondering what a plan for flourishing might look like if it was presented as a map, and what locations would I need to visit each day to feel like I'm making myself a priority and I'm feeling like I'm flourishing and feeling resilient. So I dropped some pins for some reminders to myself. One is to walk 10 minutes. I actually try to walk 15 or 20, but I was just trying to use an example. Walk 10 minutes, excuse me, eat my lunch. That sounds ridiculous, but I imagine that there are people here who understand the challenges, the very real challenges of taking time for lunch. I have always worked through lunch. I mean, I would eat at my desk, I would eat at my computer. And the last month, I'm trying out an experiment for my flourishing to step away, to go outside because it's getting nicer where I live, to listen to a podcast maybe, to talk with someone on the phone or in person, to really take that time off. So 15 to 20 minutes where I'm really taking a lunch, which sounds crazy, but I've never been very effective at taking a lunch. Using my strengths every day, reminding myself of the strengths that I have. You know, I think to remind myself, wow, what are some of my top strengths? Like one of my major strengths is love of learning, and thinking, okay, how can I make this an opportunity to learn more? Or using my creativity, how can I use my creativity for this challenge right now? Having self-compassion, remembering that I don't have to be perfect, connecting with a coworker, making sure that I'm having some social support and engaging with my colleagues. And then, you know, here in the middle is this remind myself that I am a priority park, because I forget that, and I don't go to that park very often, but I'm trying to see it at least in the distance often during the day. So we created a plan. I worked on a plan that all of these questions are listed in the plan. I'm going to show you, and we'll give you the website location. We have a tool now for a flourishing plan for helping professionals. That's really hard for me to say. I don't know why. So the sample plan, and these are the same questions that you'll find on the tool. So don't panic. What daily flourishing actions would you like to begin or broaden? So I'm assuming that we're all using a lot of flourishing actions, and maybe we just want to push ourselves slightly to go in another direction. So I just used my example of a daily walk for 10 minutes for reflection about work. I could do this in the morning, or I could do it at the end of the day. I have to sort of think a little bit more if I'm going to use this as a tool for myself. How will you know if you achieved your goal? These are just classic goal setting strategies and goal accomplishment strategies that I imagine many of us use when we help others, but they're very good for ourselves, and maybe you use them. Tracking using my calendar, right? But there are a lot of other ways to track. I don't know if anyone has ideas about how you, or can give us ideas how you track your goals. I would love to see that using your phones or your watches, or paper and pencil, or journals, or any other ideas that you have for tracking goals. That would be great. And then you might remember, or not, we talked about this thing called WOOP, right? Which is Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan. And WOOP has a very fancy science name, and of course, I can't remember right now, but the idea is that it helps people set goals and make a plan for the challenges that could get in the way. So if I'm going to WOOP my life, right, if I'm going to WOOP it up, I am going to make sure that I kind of think about through what could be the challenges that get in the way. So for me, if I'm going to take this reflective walk, not prioritizing my time or other tasks could get in the way. It might get in the way, and it will get in the way, I suspect. But then I'm going to say to myself, all right, so what are some ways you can overcome these difficulties? And that goes back to remind myself of my value. Like, I am important, I am a priority, and the values that I hold, which is some of my values are I want to be a strong person and support others. And in order to do that, I need to make sure that I'm attending to my own needs. So how can I overcome some of these difficulties? I can remind myself of my values, and I can also walk during my lunch break. So again, I'm trying to remind myself to get away from my desk at lunch and take a lunch, and I could maybe do some walking. I see some great ideas coming in for goal accountability strategies. Someone says to-do lists, checking stuff off the list. Oh, yes. And things like Evernote, right? There are apps for that, I guess. But an old-fashioned to-do list is really good and satisfying as well. Like that pencil, we just cross it off. It feels very satisfying. Thank you so much. Okay. Ms. Martinez has added the WOOP is an acronym which stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, and Plan, is an evidence-based intervention that helps introduce students to goal setting while guiding them through exploration of obstacles and barriers. Yes, WOOP is wonderful. And if you Google it, WOOP, W-O-O-P, there's a wonderful, wonderful website, including in like little index cards you can print out that remind you of what WOOP stands for, because it takes a few reminders. And also setting alarms for on the phone and calendar as a reminder. Absolutely wonderful, wonderful suggestions. And then we want to make sure that you keep your flourishing plan going, thinking about the strengths that you can use. So I'm using myself as an example, and the strengths that I can use are creativity, determination, and appreciation of beauty, right? I'm going to use those strengths to include my walk for reflection. And why is that important? Because I'm going to think of different paths to take for my walk. I'm going to listen to different podcasts on my walk. And when I'm on my walk, I'm not only going to be listening to my podcast, I am really also going to be using my eyes and looking around, right? And noticing the beautiful, in my area, beautiful flowers right now are blooming. The trees are blooming. The sky has been very blue. I really, really am trying to use all of my senses, noticing my surroundings as I'm taking that reflective walk, which helps ground me, which helps give me more energy and focus. It's also really important to think about the resources you have to keep your plan going. So thinking about who can cheer you on. I thought about this and I thought, well, I have my friends, supervisors, coworkers, and family who can remind me of that walk that I want to take, that reflective walk. Or maybe they're just going to remind me that my flourishing is important, that it really is something that I want to work on. It is part of what I say that I want to work on, despite the challenges of getting started. And then how can you keep a focus on flourishing? Because sometimes it's easier to get something started, but it's even harder to keep it going over time. And these sort of ways to check in with myself, I could ask myself on Fridays, like, how did I do? How do things go? Review my calendar for any check mark. I might put a symbol for my reflective walk. I might want to celebrate my success. I might be like, wow, look at that, a month and a half of walking reflectively. Hey, you know what? I think it's time to buy some fancy socks or some new walking shoes, or maybe it's time to grab an ice cream or a frozen yogurt, or give myself a day off. Who knows? Whatever feels like a celebration for you. Maybe it's getting a balloon or buying flowers for yourself. But it could also be not purchasing anything. It could just be a celebration for you. And also thinking about anything that might have come up. I'll be honest, when it rains or it's really cold, my reflective walk seems to kind of fall off of my list, or I'm not very motivated at all. And how can I use supports or strengths to continue? One great alternative I use is I might do some yoga in my house with a tape if it's cold and rainy outside, or I can invite my partner in and say, I really need to get a walk in today. Will you go for a walk with me? And we do it together. And that makes me feel like I'm getting the little extra support that I need to focus on my flourishing. So we put all of these things in a tool. I know this is not beautiful, but you will see it lovely. It's going to be in our wellness product collections, and that link is here. You'll get these PowerPoints, and maybe Kati, we can. Is there some way that we can send the product out to those registered as well?
Absolutely. We can, I'll send it as a PDF, and once they're also posted on our website, they'll be linked.
Thank you so much, Kati. Kati's amazing. I'm expressing my gratitude because she's so great. So you will have access to this, and this can look like whatever you want it to be, but the reason we're sort of spending a lot of time thinking about a flourishing plan for ourselves is we're likely not to focus on it. If given an opportunity, we might just decide that work is hectic. We don't need one more thing on our plate. And yet these flourishing actions, it's true, it takes action to make these things happen. And yet the benefits really are really you're investing in yourself and your future. And that really makes me think of some recent research I was reading about physical activity and the importance of physical activity, and how investing in a walk or some kind of workout or movement today actually improves your mood tomorrow. So it does build up your positive emotion in the moment, and it has an impact even on the next day on your mood. So sometimes when I take a walk and I'm really not feeling it, I say to myself, you know what, you're doing this for tomorrow, which is an odd way to feel motivated, but it does actually motivate me. So, and this tool will have a lot of the tips that we talked about. It also has sort of the 6 steps. I'm just going to go back here. It has these questions, the sample plan, and you're encouraged to use it if you find it helpful and or adapt it for the situation and surroundings that you're in. So the summary for this really is our strengths are important to support us at work and at home. They're the foundation of who we are. We all have signature strengths. We all have 4 or 5 areas where we're like, yep, that's me. That's me in a nutshell. And there are other areas that, we have, and they may be a little less prevalent, and that's okay. But it's so valuable to connect the things that we're really good at with our jobs. And I think a lot of us do that naturally. We find the things that we're really good at. And building readiness can help us feel motivated to take action. So we talked about readiness, how it's hard to be more ready. And it is yet something that we are probably very good at helping others with. And now let's work on it with ourselves. And the way we can build our readiness is ask ourselves open-ended questions. Why is this important now? How will flourishing actions make my work life better, more interesting? What do I want to try as a flourishing action? And lastly, I'm going to leave you with the idea that, of course, a flourishing plan will help us remind us to take those flourishing actions and help us sort of be accountable to ourselves. I really encourage you to choose you every day by using your strengths and taking small actions that keep you flourishing. So I open it now. I know, Kati, you have some things you need to let us know, and if there are any questions.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Scanning through the chat box in this moment, and we're having a lot of wonderful comments about WOOP, W-O-O-P. And then also in the chat box, I also dropped the link to a short evaluation survey. I saw a comment in the chat box that I wanted to see if maybe you could expand upon. I see someone saying I guess they were making a distinction between the ability to thrive at work through retirement versus feeling of slogging through. What would you say are some practical suggestions to feel more alive, I guess, and more connected to work, so it doesn't feel like you're just going through the motions?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think one strategy that I've seen and I've used myself is to ask myself, why am I doing this? And I don't mean, why am I doing this, but just sort of curiously, why am I doing this work? What brought you here in the first place? And why have you chosen to stay? And how do these things connect with your personal values? I think that really can help people feel more connected.
Absolutely. And I also see other comments in the chat referring to refusing to stay in a toxic work environment and considering other work options as well. Now, in the age of the great reprioritization, that's also known as the great resignation, that more than ever has been a current theme. What would you say, like, for people who are considering re-examining their values and looking at whether or not it aligns with their current place of employment? What are maybe some strategies to maybe reframe our thinking a little bit?
Wow, that's a huge question to unpack, Kati. But I will say that for people who feel that sort of stuckness, I would really encourage them to talk to someone, to talk to people in their lives about the choices that they have in front of them, and think, honestly and carefully about what do they want in their lives, what is important. And again, I'm going to go back to values, because to me, I do my work because I'm a values driven person. I'm doing my work because I care about other people and I want to make a difference in the world. And you need to know what your values are. And if your workplace aligns with your values, if they use your strengths and allow you the freedom to be creative in the way that you want, and if it's a good fit, sometimes workforce stuff, it's just not a good fit. It may be that your strengths, your signature strengths, don't match with the work tasks at hand. And if they really don't match and can't match for whatever reason, I'll give you just a quick example. If you are a creative type like me, and if I were and for a while I was in a job where I was doing, sort of a lot of forms and a lot of bureaucratic stuff, that just was not in alignment with my values or my strengths. So finding that good fit, I'd really encourage you to reach out and talk to an employment specialist. They're pretty amazing. Folks at the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation or other kind of employment specialists can really help you. If you want to do more of the self-help route, you could try What Color Is My Parachute? That's kind of an old book, but it's pretty good because it gets at what do you like to do, what's important to you, and how do you want to use what you have and what your strengths are in the world.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. So if we could advance the slides a little bit.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. No problem. So before we leave for today, I just wanted to remind everyone, the next one, please, that we have a podcast with Michelle toward wellness and recovery on our podcast channel. And it is part of our Flourishing at Work webinar series. And you can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and Podbean. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and one of them is actually on Whoop. So just FYI.
Yay. Wonderful. So just wanted to thank everyone for being with us today. Thank you, Michelle, for providing us with this wonderful webinar. We hope that you have found this webinar and its content very valuable, and we hope to see you at our next upcoming events. And we hope that you continue to stay safe and well. Be well, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Flourish on.